start.
Sure. Should we ask if she's good to take note, do the minutes? Or?
Yeah, hey Melody.
Yep, I can do it.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yep.
All right, this is the Tooele City Library Board meeting for September 21st, 2023. We are in the community room at the library, and this is an open meeting. We will do roll call. I am Emily Lee, the chair.
Berna Sloan.
Crystal Ford.
Susan Callahan.
And then on the phone, we have Melody Barnett and Tony Graff, and then
Chase, the library director.
Chase Randall, the library director. Perfect. All right. We will start with reports. Tony, do you have anything from the city council?
No, I don't have anything to report from the council.
All right, thank you. All right, Chase, do you have a report?
Yes. So I've sent you all a copy of my report as well. Bear with me, I'm getting used to it still. And one thing that I forgot to put on here is I guess I need to introduce myself because I've only met a couple of you. So Chase Randall, I've now been at the library for about 3 months, just over 3 months since June 12th was when I started as the new director. Kind of my history is I was born and raised up in Logan, Utah. And I went to USU, got my history degree with a minor in philosophy. So if you look at my house, I have an entire bookshelf that like half of them are like history, philosophy, or religious studies books. That's kind of my jam. I'm the type that'll listen to Supreme Court oral arguments for fun. That's kind of where I'm at. In another life, I was a lawyer or an attorney.
For fun. Okay.
No, I
Some
find
of us do it because we're bored.
I find it fascinating. And then I did get my master's degree in business administration. I worked at the Plasma Center. I don't know if any of you donated plasma before, blood plasma, but I was a phlebotomist, then worked my way up to management. And then I switched over to a nursing home company. I worked at their corporate office in the IT team, and then on their labor management operations side. And then when things got weird and the company got bought out and the new owners weren't exactly jiving with me, I started looking around and I kind of fell into the library director job, and I've been loving it so far. It's kind of like I've arrived, it feels like, because that was something I seriously considered after getting my history degree and philosophy degree, was going into library sciences or becoming a teacher or something like that, but then life took me in a different direction, so it's nice to come full circle kind of thing. I'm super excited to be the library director. Things have been going well. As with any new thing, there's always just the learning curve, but it's been going well, and I'm excited to be working with you all and to continue to make Tooele City Library an excellent place to come and be. So, any questions before I go into my report? Or?
So you live in Tooele?
Yes, I live just down on Coleman Street.
Oh, okay.
So actually in the same neighborhood as Tony Graff. So,
oh, there you go.
Yeah. All right, so just some general announcements is that we were recertified by the state library. That was, I got to learn about that real quick because that was one of the first things that I had to do was to go through all that. As far as the staff-wise goes, we did have 2 openings, 2 part-time library tech positions open up. One was due that we she resigned before we could let her go from the programs team. And so then that created an opening when one of our own techs was like, hey, I want to be on the programs team. So we switched her over, and then we had another staff member that left us to go to Grantsville City Library. So we then promoted up one of our internal people. So Casey Cox was the one that went to the Grantsville Library. Due to a wonderful career advancement for her. Alyssa was moved over to fill our part-time open library programs position, and then Claudette has moved up to full-time. So that leaves us with 2 open positions. We had 137 applicants. So that's what I've been doing. That's what we've been doing for the last week is just going through those. We whittled it down to 97 after excluding the people that didn't finish filling out the application or that didn't have a high school diploma or GED. So we're working our way through that. We're hoping to do interviews next week and then have those positions filled as reasonably quickly as we can. As far as the building and grant projects, so one of our big projects that I'm going to be looking at with the city engineer is the back entrance. Because of the way the roof is slanted, the snow just slides right off, and that can actually be a hazard. So there is a tiny little awning there, but I'm going to be looking at solutions to maybe just cover that whole section, so when staff are going out in the winter, they don't have to fear a bunch of snow suddenly dropping on it. We're also going to be, I've talked with our Parks and Rec department that we're going to be needing to requesting a new boiler, chiller, and AC, as well as a couple other kind of those big ticket items. We're going to be checking on the state of the roof because now the library is 23, almost 24 years old, so some of those big items start to come up due. So I'll be working with the city council and the city engineer to make sure that we can do those as efficiently and quickly and minimize cost. I also plan to look into the possibility of xeriscaping the park strips around here in the library. Since we're in a drought and trying to conserve water, and want to move in that direction as well to be more sustainable and also cut down on costs over the long term. We've got some upcoming big events. We've got the Haunted Halloween in the Park that our programs team partners with the Parks and Rec department to do that at the Train Museum. It's super fun. My family loves it. And let's keep promoting that. We're also doing D&D classes for our teens. And so far it's going to be like we filled up registration just like that. There's also I saw my
What are D&D, sorry?
Sorry, Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh.
Yes.
Sorry.
Sorry. Sorry, you're good. Yeah.
It's like a card game.
I know it is, I just was
It's
like.
beyond a card game.
That's
Yes.
true.
And I only have a surface level understanding of it myself. I've never dived into that. I have family members that are way
But it filled up fast, huh?
Yeah, it filled up really fast. We also have the solar eclipse. We have solar eclipse classes, so you guys can go online or let people know they can go online. They can register to pick some up. It's a limit of 2 per family, but it's available if they want it. And
When's the
then
solar
Yeah,
eclipse?
what is
the
that?
14th, sorry, October
Oh,
14th,
October.
at I think it's 9 a.m. if I'm remembering correctly. I'd have to look it up. And then we have a Girl Scout troop that we're going to be doing an activity to teach them computer safety.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
in October. And then we'll be talking about this a little bit later in this meeting is one of the projects that I've been working on for the last couple of months in coordination with the city attorney, as well as just what I've learned from the other library directors, is implementing some policy changes. Nothing major. It's all basically formalizing either what we're already doing or making some common sense changes. And we'll go over those in detail. And one of the big things with the standards of conduct is taking the emergency policy that was put into place and just formalizing a lot of it. So that way we're not having 2 policies saying the same thing, it just collapses it all in. I went over it with the mayor and she's totally cool with it. So we'll talk more about that, but any questions for me?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We have quite a few discussion items. First one, so by code, we only have to meet every quarter. We're currently meeting every month, but during the summer. So the proposal is to go to a quarterly meeting schedule, have those meetings be a little more robust, but then they're not every single month. Anyone want to make a comment on that before we vote on it? Okay. So the proposal is to meet quarterly. I guess we don't really have to vote on it because that's how it is in the code. So that's what
So
we'll be
we'll just
doing.
move
We'll
it
just,
forward.
yeah, we'll just do that. So the next meeting will likely be December.
I was wondering, is it possible, because it's once a quarter, if we could do it maybe in October, so that way we're not fighting with the holidays at all?
That's probably a good
Or do
idea
January.
given the next discussion item. So yeah, so there will be one in October and then it will move quarterly, so then it'll be January. And then whatever it is after that.
May.
We'll just plan on the 3rd Thursday of the beginning of each quarter? or
So,
what?
yeah, 3rd Thursday. So October, January, May.
I think we're just right in April.
Isn't it January, February, March, so April?
November.
Because
Yeah.
April would be the first month,
Yeah, April.
March. Yep. And then June, and then July. So October, January, April, and July. Okay. So the next discussion item is new board positions. First of all, we have 3 openings on the board that calls will go out for. Secondly, I have to step down as chair and as part of the board. There's some stuff going on in my personal life that requires me to do so. So as of October 1st, I will no longer be part of the board. The mayor and Chase have been very gracious about that. But what that means is it necessitates one of you all becoming the chair. We also currently, the vice chair, Sarah, is not participating on the board, and so we need a vice chair as well. And then Melody is our secretary at the moment. So I'd like to hear thoughts on either if somebody wants to nominate themselves tonight, or if that is something you want to take up at the October meeting, which I will not be at. So any thoughts, or anyone want to nominate themselves or someone else? Because somebody's gonna have to do it.
I don't think I can be PTA president and chair of the library board at the same time.
That's fair. It's a quarterly thing. It's
Sure.
not
a ton.
a ton. But and also table it until October. If Melody wants to step up and do it.
I was just thinking how glad I am I'm not there.
Doesn't mean you can't be nominated.
But no, I was gonna just say, what, Emily? I got on the board to hang out with you.
I know. I know.
If you don't want to find out anybody.
So, anyone? You wanna table it till October?
It seems like.
Okay, so,
I don't know how much I'm supposed to.
no, you can be involved. I mean, you're not like a non-voting person, but you can be involved in discussions.
Okay.
So why don't you guys we'll table it till October. Like I said, as of October 1st, there won't be a chair. It does not mean that the board won't function, but just know that in October, someone will need to be a chair. In the meantime, calls will go out for new board membership, and unless you all have people that you think would be good on the board, and they can be brought on. So
Could a new board member be the chair?
that's how I
Became.
Yeah. So in October, that's what it will be. A chair and a vice chair, and then the secretary, but we have one of those. Okay. So.
Got it.
All right. The policies and procedure items for discussion, I'm going to give to you.
Okay.
Cheers.
All right. So hopping over to the proposal of updated policies and procedures. So it's quite a few. So I just want to start with the easiest one first. So it should be the one. Actually, I'll just go in order that they're in your stack.
That'll be good.
And I did email these out for your review as well. So the first one, this one's more of a form. It's not necessarily something that you guys that you would vote on. It's just a form that we would make available to the public. And this is the request for reconsideration or removal of a library resource. So this is if someone wants to object or either have the item or resource removed completely, or say, hey, this belongs in the adult section. Why is it in the YA section? Or
Are you talking about like book banning stuff?
yeah. So basically, if they think, hey, this book shouldn't be in the library at all, or even if they're like, hey, this book is in the kids area, it should be in the junior area. Either of those two. So the red line here is essentially I took this whole first page, which outlines the procedures that we would follow, and I've added that to the collection development policy. Since this seemed to be a policy, yet it was on a form, so this way it just formalizes it, makes it more official, and it's subject to your guys' review and the mayor's signature. I didn't change much of the wording, or at least we'll go over that when we read the collection development. If you go to page number 2, The only change here was I added that this is a request for reconsideration or removal of a physical library resource. Because I don't have control over what's on Libby. I have very limited control. I can add titles, but I cannot remove them essentially. So it's clarifying that people can only put in a request if it's a physical library resource. And then I added under patron information, library card number, because one of the changes that we'll review in the collection development policy is essentially, I added in a clause to clarify that for you to put in this request, you either have to be a Tooele City resident or have an active library card in good standing. So that clause was not in there, and there have been some libraries that have been bombarded by outside groups submitting these kind of requests. So it made sense to add that language in, like, hey, you have to actually live here or have an active library card in good standing. If you owe us money, you have to pay the money first before you can submit it. Questions so far? The next page, simple change, just added that clarifying, hey, you have to declare, are you an active library card holder or city resident? And then just redid the numbering, and that was the only changes for the form. Any questions, concerns, comments on that one?
No, but do you want us to vote on these then?
So no, I wasn't planning on voting today because I do want to have the city attorney give them one good thorough review first, and then get your guys' feedback before we vote it on.
So there is a chance for the board to look at them
Yes.
before there's voting? Okay.
Because I don't want to ambush you and be like, hey, you have to vote right now. So the next one, would be a brand new policy. We currently have a form for patrons or members of the public to fill out to reserve either this room or the 2 reading rooms. However, based on feedback that I got from my Utah Public Library Directors Conference, they did talk about that it is a really good idea to have this as a policy, not as just a form, based on problems that have happened at other libraries. So basically what I did to draft this was I took the Salt Lake City Library's policies and procedures and I copy and pasted. I reworded it to account for the fact that we're a town of 37,000, not a county-wide system. So made some rewording changes. I have not run this by the attorney yet because I've just finished it up just the other day. But this just essentially outlines how we're going to manage the community room and the reading rooms. Since it's a brand new policy, I don't think I need to read it word for word to you now. If you guys can just review it, and then at the next board meeting, we can discuss any changes that you need, and I'll let you know what changes the attorney suggested, because I would imagine he's
So
going to
this
have
whole thing is a new policy?
brand new.
So that we need to read it all?
Yeah. So the only thing that was in there before is essentially on the form that we had for people to reserve this room. We basically just had like 4 lines that said, can't be used for commercial purposes, clean up after yourselves, you can't hog it, and you can't have like one group reserving it more than like 4 times and within it 4 active reservations. And that was it. So this was just meant to flesh those out, clarify, and kind of preempt any potential problems.
So what is the commercial use then?
So I still left that in. That was actually a question. If you look on it at
Yeah.
2.4,
Yeah.
I'm not certain about that because the Salt Lake Library, they say, yes, you can reserve it for commercial purposes, you just have to pay a fee. Whereas, and on our form before we had that you couldn't use it for commercial purposes, so that's something that I want to discuss with the city attorney to verify, like, where does the city stand on that? Because
What the risk is.
and verify there if that causes risk or things like that. So we'll read it, and you guys can look into it as well if you would like, and then at our next meeting we can discuss it, the exact language of that word. So,
I
okay.
don't like this pen, it's very, it's not ballpoint, it's
It's a thick ink.
yeah, the thick one, I don't like it.
Okay. Any questions about this one or anything else? Okay. The next one is also a brand new policy that we have nothing on this previously.
So this one's new too.
Yeah, the decorations and display policy, policy number 8. This one is also same thing, just as a result of issues that have cropped up at other libraries where they got in trouble for not having a clear policy about this aspect of running a library. Basically, the purpose of it is to just clarify, for example, decorations, like what's our standards regarding decorations. Printed materials displays, so like, for example, the poster that we have out there by the entrance for community events. How do we determine what's allowed to be put up there? Are we going to put up a sign advertising McDonald's? Right, probably not. Are we going to put up a sign for the Tooele, the high school doing a play? Probably. And this is just meant to clarify what criteria I, as the library director, need to be using when saying yes or no to different groups or organizations. Because as of right now, it's a pretty arbitrary process. There's no guidance on it. Same thing with this one. I looked through the Salt Lake City Library's policies and procedures and copied a lot of this word for word and just made some minor tweaks and edits. But same thing, I have not submitted this to the attorney yet to review. That he's on vacation right now. So when he gets back, I'll send that to him. And then the third section of it is just for the special area displays. So like the displays that we as librarians will do of like, here's all the books that have a red cover. Here's our Halloween display of horror novels or horror movies. Like governing, how do we manage those? Stuff like that. Any questions about this one? Okay. And then the third new policy is about our programs. So same thing, this just governs how do we determine what kind of programs to do, what's our criteria for dealing with third parties who want to come in and help volunteer to do programs, stuff like that. And to make it clear, there is a huge difference between someone reserving this room for use and versus a library-sponsored program. So this just clarifies that, and same thing, basically tore it straight from the Salt Lake City Library's policies and just adapted it. Whereas they had like a 20-page policy, we don't need to get as specific with a lot of the things. So. Questions on that one? Okay, so now to the more meaty one. So for the standards of conduct policy, one of my goals was it was with the emergency protocol that was put in place back in May. There was a lot of duplicate language between that and this policy, and essentially I wanted to collapse it so it's all just in one policy, one-stop shop. People aren't having to look in multiple places. So, and then a couple other little tweaks. So I'll take a second. I want to go over the changes to this one because they're a little bit. This is already an established policy. So nothing changed on the first page. I think I just went through and capitalized library, and that was the only change there. Page number 2. So one of the things that we have under section 4 is previously food and beverages were not allowed in the library except for water if it was in a securely closed container. Based on feedback that I've gotten from staff as well as kind of my own family's even experience with the library, I've gotten a lot of feedback that we might want to kind of loosen it a little bit. So instead of it being not allowed, the proposed language that I have is food, snacks, and beverages are generally allowed in the library as long as use is not disruptive to other patrons or library staff. Disruptive uses include strong odors, loud rapper noises, etc. All beverages must be kept in securely closed containers. Patrons must thoroughly clean up after themselves and leave no noticeable food or drink residue, and ensure all trash is put in the library trash cans. Patrons may not bring in main food dishes or full meals into the library, only snacks will be allowed. Food and beverages are not allowed near electronic library equipment. Library-sponsored events may include food and beverage in designated areas at the discretion of authorized library staff. And then for bringing food into the community room for an event or something, that would be something that I would add to the community room request form, just that they need to spell out what's their plans for food, and then that would be up to my judgment of like, maybe you can be a little bit more lenient if they're using it for an event versus just people bringing in stuff to the library. The goal of this is because we have a lot of patrons that'll come in and then we'll stop them because they got their coffee. And we'll be like, hey, you can't bring that in. And they'll be like, really? Like it's in a container. Like, what are you? But it's like, and then, so a lot of our negative patron interactions happen that way. And people sneak in the food anyway. We find it in the trash. Like they're just a lot more subtle about it. This way I think we can find a nice middle ground. Because previously what I was hearing from the library technicians is people were bringing in like DoorDash and like full pizzas or a giant bag of McDonald's and just leaving tons of trash, a big mess. So this way we're saying, okay, look, you can't bring in something like that, but if you want to bring in a bag of chips or a little bag of cookies or give your child a cheese stick to munch on, as long as you clean up after yourself and you're not being disruptive and all that, then that should be fine. So. Is there any questions or concerns or comments about that change? Okay. In section 5, I just updated to add vaping in there. And then per the attorney's counsel to change because before we had the exact code listed out, but apparently that's changed. So he said to avoid you having to double check it every couple months or something, to just state the law and then we're good. And then the 25 feet thing, he wasn't able to find any language requiring that, so he advised that we remove that part of it. Same thing for section 6.2. I just made that change to spell out the act rather than the code that it's there. So that way we're still covered and we're not having to constantly double check to make sure it's explicit. Questions, concerns before we go to section 9. Okay. So if you flip over the page to page 3, section 9.0, this is the facility access for minors. So this section, I just basically took the emergency procedures, copy and pasted. I didn't change any of the language there, so we would still continue with our policy of if they're 10 or older, they can be in the library if they have the pass. If they're 9 or younger, then they have to be supervised. Like I said, just the exact same language.
We talked at length about that, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then section 10. So this one, I took some of the language from the emergency protocol and then I tried to make it so that they matched each other. I know all of this is in red. A lot of it is still the same language, just the way that the Word document, as I was making tweaks and changes, it makes it look like I changed everything. I did not. A lot of it is very much the same. I did go through and change everywhere, or most of the places where it said children, to minors. So that way it more carefully meshes with our facility access for minors part of the policy. So let's just run through it really quick. So the library assumes no responsibility for unattended minors. Library must not be used as an alternative for daycare. Parents and legal guardians are legally responsible for their minor child's behavior and resource selections, even when absent. Parents and legal guardians are responsible for supervising their minor child's access to library materials and services. It is assumed that minors who visit the library unattended are authorized by a parent or guardian to select and use the full range of materials and services available to library visitors and cardholders under the age of 18. Library users who violate conduct rules may be asked to leave the library. This includes library users under 18. When circumstances such as age or time of day pose a potential safety concern for a minor, proper authorities, police, may be contacted to assume responsibility. Minors 10 and older must be sufficiently mature and able to abide by all conduct standards before visiting the library without an adult or supervising responsible individual. And then when a minor that appears to be under age 10 is found unattended in the library and a responsible adult is not located after a reasonable attempt by a staff member, the proper authorities will be contacted to assume responsibility for that minor. So no.
So we're still not allowing kids over 10 unless they have the special.
Unless they have the form filled out and the pass, or they're being supervised. So one potential area that I want to discuss with the attorney is what if we have a 16-year-old supervising an 8-year-old, for example. That was kind of seemed to be more of a potential gray area. So I am planning on asking the attorney about how do we handle those kind of situations where if the 16-year-old comes in, they have a pass,
Right.
but they're bringing their 9-year-old brother or sister.
Well, if the rule says a legal guardian or an adult,
But they're not an
there's
adult.
no gray area.
So that's where I was wondering is that something we wanted to look at adjusting or talk to the attorney about? What would your guys' thoughts on that be?
I think it opens up a line that gets real hard to draw.
Yeah.
If you don't just say adult or legal guardian,
Okay.
because then why 16 and not 15?
Yeah, and then
Right.
why 15, not 14?
Exactly,
Okay.
and some 14-year-olds are more responsible than some 17-year-olds, and anyway, I think
Maybe you can look into see if there's any kind of wording you can say where it's responsible sibling or babysitter, but even that would get
even that gets real
too
sketchy because
much.
I don't know
Yeah.
how you enforce that either.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I wanted
I
to.
think a clean adult or legal guardian makes it very clear, but also from a responsibility standpoint, a minor having responsibility in this under a policy for a younger sibling, and Tony knows more about this than I do, and neither of us are acting as attorneys here, but it gets harder when
Okay.
you're holding them responsible versus an adult or legal guardian responsible for that kid.
Okay.
All right.
And
So,
that's why I wanted to bring it up, because that was a kind of an edge case that a staff member brought up, and I'll make sure that we
Yeah,
clarify.
I think we draw the line at adult legal guardian,
Okay.
make it very clear.
Okay. All right, any other questions, concerns, comments about this section? Okay, so on to the next page. So section now, it used to be 10, now it's 11. This one is where I took the section of the emergency access policy where under enforcement, and I took some of those ideas and sentences and then combined them with our current enforcement section. So essentially, like I said, I basically copied it over. I changed some wording here and there. For example, I changed the library supervisor to library administration, so that way it includes either of the two supervisors or myself. So Tooele City Library requires strict compliance with library policies and rules for patron conduct. Library administration has the responsibility to enforce library policy, including suspension of library privileges and or expulsion from the library. When one or more persons in a larger group of persons is violating library policy, the entire group may be subject to enforcement of this policy. So the main wording change there was, it used to say expelled on the emergency policy. I just changed it to subject to enforcement, because depending on the severity of their violation, that way it's just in compliance with the rest of this section. Library personnel have the responsibility to inform patrons of conduct that violates library policy, and library personnel will document major violations. All persons refusing to cease minor policy violations, who commit major policy violations, who commit crimes, or who threaten, insult, or abuse library personnel or patrons will be reported to library administration and may be subject to one of the more following consequences. And then it goes through suspension of some or all, expulsion from library property, notification of appropriate law enforcement, or liability for damages or injuries. Go ahead.
Has this been run by Roger?
I've made a couple wording tweaks in just the last couple days. I'm going to run it by him again.
Yeah, ask him about that subject to enforcement, and whether or not, where you say it may be subject to enforcement of this policy rather than a specific enforcement.
Or should
Whether or not
I,
it
or like
needs to be specific.
That's too vague.
I wonder if it's,
consequences as listed below or something?
that's better to me.
Okay.
I think something that points to a standard so that it is less subjective on if someone were to scrutinize it.
Okay.
Or call into question why they got one whatever sanction, whatever, and someone else got something else. It's easier if you're pointing to a certain standard and that, like, this is how we came to this conclusion versus, well, this gut feeling was this and this gut feeling was this.
So would you say that it's just saying consequences listed are under 11.5?
I think that's better than subject to enforcement of this policy.
Okay.
But then have
Because-
Roger look at it.
Because here's a potentially valid question. In the Salt Lake City Library's standards of conduct, they have like 10 pages where they list almost every possible policy violation you could commit and exactly what the punishment or the enforcement is for each of those things. I looked at that and I was kind of like, do we need to get that detailed with it? Or do you think our current language of if they are refusing to cease a minor policy violation or committing major policy violations or commit crimes, threaten, then they're maybe subject to all of these, any or all of those? Do we want to keep it a little bit more vague, like how we have it? Do we need to, should I go back to the Salt Lake City Libraries and basically copy and paste over that and then adapt it? I was unsure about that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
My thought is this is fine for now. In practice, it might be nice to have, like, this is what falls under here, but without having to go through the whole, right, leave it open so that you can change those practices.
Okay.
I feel like the more objective you can make these, the less scrutiny it's gonna get when they're imposed. That's my feeling about it.
Okay, and I do have I'm working kind of on an informal flow chart thing for the staff of what constitutes, of like how to handle different situations and things like that. But yeah, so I'll check with the attorney and see what he thinks. But if it needed, we could go that route and add another 10 pages to this. So
I mean, I can see why Salt Lake would have,
yeah,
right? And we certainly are different. I don't know that it needs to be so robust right now. I'm a fan of more.
Yeah, no, and
more transparency.
And that's where I was
about
kind
where
of
things are gonna
where we
fall.
want to go. Okay, so would you say that maybe we're good for now, but maybe
That's
something
fine,
to
yeah.
look at?
Yeah, and then see what Roger, and maybe after they read it and think about it, they'll have other
Okay.
thoughts too.
Okay. And then 11.6, all written warnings, suspensions, and expulsions will be reviewed by library administration. Documentation of the expulsion will be, so just to clarify what I meant by written warning. So essentially, the way that I'm going to be working with the staff to do is, for example, if someone comes in and they're doing what what would be considered a minor policy violation, like they're just talking a little loud on the phone, their kids are making a little bit of a mess, the baby's been crying for more than 10 minutes or whatever it is, that it's becoming disruptive to other patrons. And we go up to that person and say, hey, you're violating the standards of conduct, we need you to do X, Y, or Z, or cease doing X, Y, or Z. And then if the person's like, oh, I'm sorry, and they hang up or they do their best to stop it, I would say that's a minor policy violation, that's just a verbal warning. No documentation needed. If they then give attitude, or they continue the behavior, or they start to curse out the staff, or anything that would escalate it, either continuing to commit the policy violation or escalating, then at that point that would be, okay, here's your written warning, here's a copy of the written warning, all that stuff, and then they would document that, and then I would review that on a weekly basis, if not the day of. And then obviously if they continue to be super insistent, then that's where we would start saying, hey, like if you continue, you're going to be suspended from the library for at least a month. Or if, it becomes bad enough, then we would escalate to expulsion and even law enforcement if needed. So that's kind of the workflow in a nutshell. So verbal warning, written warning, suspension, expulsion. Or I guess temporary suspension / temporary expulsion. Then indefinite expulsion is the final. If they're expelled, documentation of the expulsion will be of any, I should change that to any expulsion. Or what of expulsion? I think if I need to reword that. Anyway, sometimes reading these out loud, you see little things. Documentation of an expulsion will be made available to the expelled patron upon request, including the reason for the expulsion. I changed that one a little bit because in the emergency protocol, it stated that we have to provide it to them that day. And I was kind of thinking, well, if they're committing a crime and they get arrested, I don't want to be like, as they're leaving, oh yeah, here's the copy of the documentation. So just changing the wording there to say, hey, if you want it, we'll get it to you. But library personnel may call 911. That one I just copied straight over. Same, library administration may request a police response when a person expelled from the library returns to the library in violation of the terms of expulsion. They are trespassing. That one I also just copied straight over. And then in section 12, just a couple little tweaks here. I just changed it so that if anyone who is indefinitely expelled from the library or whose access to library services revoked under this policy, they can appeal that in writing to me. And I did remove the time frame requirement. One concern was brought up that, wait, you might be handling something from 10 years ago then. And I would say, especially with minors, like if someone comes in and they're being a really dumb 16-year-old, but they come in back in 10 years, they've obviously changed, they can write a really nice letter stating why they've changed, why they deserve to be let back in the library. I think it would be totally sensible to still have some mercy in that case. And that's why I removed the date, the timeline, time requirement for both of those. So any questions, concerns, comments about the enforcement section or section 12?
Yeah, you might want to check up on that, on putting some time period on it.
Okay.
Because otherwise someone's going to come in from 15 years ago and no one's left to
Yeah,
verify what happened.
And because I was discussing that with the mayor, and she, I can see that argument, but I can also see like maybe people, like giving people a second chance. That if they have reformed, if it's been that long, then maybe they've reformed, and then if they're not, we let them back in. If they're not, then they're still subject to this policy, and if they start misbehaving, they would just go right back to being expelled if they haven't changed. So that's
are these records held like forever?
Yes.
And then so if it was me and I submitted my name, it would pop up and say, red flag.
Yeah, so we have a log that we keep track of all of that. I think I would need to double check how far back we have it currently. I think we have it going back at least 10 years. Before the 10 years, it's kind of spotty. And I don't think we'd even know if someone was expelled and they tried to come back in if it's been more than 10 years. But at the very least, that's one of the things that I'm going to ensure is we continue having a very robust record of that moving forward. Any other comments, questions, Melody or Tony? Anything from either of you? Been nice and quiet.
If I didn't have myself muted, you would hear my children.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
No, I don't have any questions. Sounds good.
Okay. All right, so I know this is riveting reading, but we're almost done. Next is the collection development policy. So on the first page, all I did was just add a the where it needed it. Easy peasy. Page number 2, under section 2.9, I just added in a section basically stating that you have to have a library card whose account is in good standing to submit purchase requests. So it didn't make sense to me why we would allow someone from St. George to say, hey, you should buy this book. It's like, well, you're not a patron of the library. You're not even part of the tax base of the library. Yeah, so I added that in for them that they have to be an active library card holder and then submit the purchase request either through the online catalog or the form that we have available at the front desk that then comes to me, and then based on the criteria in the collection development policy, I would say yay or nay to purchasing that resource. So,
You're talking about if somebody requests purchasing a book, a specific book?
yeah, if they're like, hey, you're missing the last book in this series, or like, hey, I'm a self-published author and I'd like you to pick up my book, that you have to be an active library card holder to do that. So, comments?
You can request books from Libby?
Yes. Yeah, no, just shoot me an email, go onto the online catalog or get the form and send it my way. It's right there online. And that's one other thing. We cleaned up the website in the last month or two. That was one of my projects, is we got the website cleaned up. It has pictures of our library instead of stock photos of some other library somewhere.
Is that the website on the Tooele City page?
Yeah, so the Tooele City Library page.
Yeah.
We updated the pictures, did some cleanup on there because there was a lot of broken links and stuff like that. So it should be pretty good now. One of the things I did add is we have a policies and forms page where all of the policies are readily available for the public, and then we also have the forms on there. I still have not put up the request for reconsideration form or the community room application form, just because those are currently under review, and I want to get the updated versions to upload those. And I'm hoping to do that after our next board meeting and we get the new policies in place. So yeah, any questions about that 2.9 section? Questions, comments, concerns? Okay. On to page number 3. Just two minor tweaks. Just adding a the where it was needed, it looked like. And then I changed under 8 from new materials to just resources. So it's a little more generic. So just to help cover us with that, using that language instead of material. So on page number 4, here's where we get into the meat of the changes. So under section 9, I just added a bunch of clarification to reflect what we kind of talked about with the request for reconsideration form. So I added reconsideration or removal of physical library resources. And then I added under section 9.1, I moved some stuff around and I added section 9.1 just to clarify, okay, what does this form even do? Like, what's even the process? Because that was even a question that I had. I'm like, wait, reconsideration, like, what do you mean, right? What does that even mean? So I clarified reconsideration of resources defined as moving that resource from one section of the library to another. So if someone says, hey, this book is not appropriate for teenagers, I think it should just be in the adult section, not the YA section or the junior section. Then we're like, okay, fill out the form, explain why you think that, and then we go through the process that we'll talk about in just a second. So that's a reconsideration request. Then a removal is saying, hey, you need to dump it in the trash. This book is not appropriate for the library at all.
No more
Anywhere.
Harry Potter.
Yeah, no more Harry Potter in the library, yeah.
That would just surprise me. I mean, that brought a whole new generation of readers.
It is a book series that we will, I don't think, ever weed from our collection. Just based on
No,
these-
I'm just surprised that
it's
there are
so-
people trying to ban it. It just was, and
So-
I understand it's witchcraft, but I mean, seriously, my kids were not, a couple of them were not readers at all, and because of the Harry Potter series.
And maybe this will date me, but I was the teenager that got the last Harry Potter book and then shut myself in my room for 12 hours and
Just
read
read.
it the whole day.
I was a.
Did it in one day.
We
Yeah,
we
it
bought.
was
We couldn't wait till the
funny.
book come out, and then so we started out with Chris. So he was the fastest reader, and then I was the second. So we did it by who was the fastest reader.
There
So
you
Chris
go.
got it, then I got it, and then my one daughter, then the next daughter. But so the rest of us had to just wait.
You know
Just
what?
the one copy.
Yeah, I would stay up till like midnight reading books every night. So, okay. And then in 9.2, I basically just, for clarity's sake, I squished 2 provisions together. This is the red in there is not a rewording, I just relocated it. Essentially just saying, hey, we endorse a policy where individuals have the right to choose which library resources they will use. No individual group has the right to restrict freedom of others to read or view what they wish. No book or other material is automatically removed from the collection due to individual objections. The library cooperates with persons and groups concerned with resisting abridgment of free expression and free access to ideas by providing an objective, consistent process whereby patrons can request or protest a resource. 9.3, I greatly expanded it, and this is where I added in the language that for you to submit a reconsideration or removal request in the physical collection, you have to either be resident of Tooele City or hold an active library card in good standing.
So that's from this first. That's what you took.
Yeah, so I removed it from there and just added it here so it's in the formal part of the policy.
Yep.
Because some libraries have had issues of outside groups basically bombarding the library with those requests, and it's like, that makes no sense. You don't even,
Yep.
And then just obviously clarified, hey, it's only for physical resources that we acquire. Any questions, concerns, comments so far?
No, I like that move.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then 9.4 is where I took all the stuff that was on the reconsideration reform, and then I pasted it into the policy with some wording changes. So this would be, okay, someone gets the form, they fill it out, they submit it to me, now what? So let's talk through this, and this was, let's talk through it, because I have made some changes since we talked, because I had a meeting with the mayor about this, and this is kind of what we came up with. More than happy to hear your guys' feedback on it. So essentially, the party seeking reconsideration or removal of a library physical resource receives a copy of our collection development policy and a request for reconsideration or removal of library resource form. Physical, I need to add physical in there. So it's good to read these out loud. The party seeking reconsideration or removal must read, view, or listen to all or substantial portions of the work before the resource may receive a formal reconsideration. Obviously, yeah, that was on the form, just copied that over. 9.4.3, the resource and the completed request for reconsideration or removal of a physical library resource form are submitted to the library director. So then at that point, the library director and the chair of the library board or designee assigned by the library board fully reviews the form and the resource. After a full review of the request and the resource, the library director and a member of the library board will determine whether the resource does merit relocation or removal according to the standards set forth in the collection development policy. The resulting recommendations will be submitted to the library director, who will present them at the library's board at a properly noticed board meeting. The library board will then vote on the recommendation and submit it to the library director. The library director will then make the final decision on whether the resource merits relocation or removal. So this is a decent change from how it was being done before. And the change made here was based on the advice of the attorney, because since the library board is an advisory board only, he was very wary of saying that the board makes the final decision, because that would give you extra powers beyond what's outlined in the city code. So he did say that he recommended the library director be the ultimate final decision maker, quote unquote, because then that's more in line with how our library is set up. However, I can't imagine, or it would be hard to imagine a scenario where the library board says A and then the library director does B. Right? I doubt that would ever happen. And this is also a little bit different because previously the old form had it where a staff member and the library director would review the form. But I wanted to change that because that opened up questions about if I have to have one of my staff members read the whole series of The Lord of the Rings, right? That's going to take them a significant amount, or The Wheel of Time or something like that. That's going to take them a significant amount of time. If that's something I'm requiring them to do, I would have to pay them. So either I have to take somebody off my schedule for 2 weeks while they review the resource, or that makes more sense for that to be where the board does get involved, because that is within your advisory capacity to have that happen. And we put in the chair would be the default, or what I would imagine is how we could do it is because we've only had, have you guys had any of those requests in your time on the board?
No, I haven't.
No.
So I did talk to Steve, who's been here 22 years. He did say there was one request like 10 years ago. About it was something about Game of Thrones or something that they thought it was inappropriate. So he said that he had to watch the whole season of Game of Thrones.
Oh, darn.
I know, right? He's like, it was great rewatch for me.
I've
so.
never seen it.
Yeah.
Oh, you haven't?
I know.
I like it.
So,
I've heard it's good.
Don't watch it with your children.
Yes, don't watch it with your children.
so he did. So that was why I wasn't comfortable with the idea of a staff member doing it, just because then that's issues of having to pay them and taking away from the library, and that's where I think the board would definitely be able to fill in since you guys are volunteer and everything. And then that way, me and or the library director and the member of the board review it, talk about it together, present a recommendation to the whole board, vote on it, and then the library director makes the final ultimate decision on it. And then I did ask the attorney if we needed an appeal process, because I know like Salt Lake's needed an appeal, and he did say that since it's not a right that's being taken away or there's no requirement for due process with it, that there is no need for an appeal. I guess the informal appeal process would be they would go to the mayor, who's my boss.
Yeah, they would naturally ask. I
Yeah.
think, if they
Like,
wanted to.
and if someone really wanted to appeal it, then I would say, yeah, talk to the mayor, because like, as an appointed employee, right, mayor could wake up on a bad day and be like, okay, Chase is gone, right? So that's where the checks and balance, I guess, would come in. Then the library director will inform the library board and the party seeking reconsideration removal of the decision, which shall be final. And then a resource will go through the reconsideration removal process only once within a 3-year period, unless the content has undergone major revisions. That way, to make sure that people can't just spam requests over and over again about the same book or movie or resource. I know that was a lot. Any questions, concerns, comments about that section? Okay. All right. We're almost done. This is the last one. We're getting there. We're almost there. This one is the circulation policy. This one has the most minor changes out of all of them. Essentially, just making a couple tweaks here and there to clarify some new stuff we're allowing patrons to check out. We removed this line right here due to the fact that we're adding in that people will be able to check out technology items or devices. So this way, we're just saying that like it's some things. Such as the hotspots, for example. So we've started allowing patrons that they can check out a hotspot. So if you need internet or something, you're just moving, you don't have internet set up at your house, you can come and check out a hotspot so you can have internet, or if you're going on a trip or something. We have 15 of them. And this way, if you go to section, so that's the only change right there was we just changed it to say what determines whether an item is overdue. In section 9.2, if you go there really quick, we just added that if you're checking out a device or technology items, and it's 1 day overdue, we're going to block your card that day. Whereas normally we don't block someone's card until an item is overdue by more than 14 calendar days.
Will that turn off the service?
Yes, we also turn off the service.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's going to stop them from just keeping it?
Yeah. No. So we turn off. We would
Right.
disable the device and bill their account, lock down their library
Yeah.
card
Okay.
the day after it's due. Just because obviously they're a lot more valuable than a
Sure.
$10 book or
Right,
whatever.
right.
So, and then the only other tweaks made here is just fixed a couple wording changes, and then one other change that I actually found out literally right before this meeting started was in section 3.2. It says once available, hold items available. Okay, I need to reword that. That's weird language. It says hold items available will be held for 1 workday. I found out we're actually doing for 3 days, just to help patrons so they have time to pick it up. We've been doing 3 days, so then I'm going to want to reword that just to say 3 work days rather than 1.
Yeah.
Is there a reason it says work days, not business days?
Because we're open on Saturdays,
Oh,
so it's counting Saturdays in
okay.
there. And I wondered that if I needed to change
Do
it.
business days not just count your business days, or is it
Well,
always
I
Monday through
think generally when
Friday?
it says business days, it's like Monday through Friday.
Yeah, Monday through Friday,
Interesting.
excluding holidays.
You might want to put like library work days.
Yeah.
That's good idea, that library. Library
Okay.
days. Okay, and that's it. Any questions, concerns, comments about any of that? So I know it's a lot, but hey, the bright side is once we get through this, then I think we'll be good. We'll be set on our policies, procedures. So.
Yeah, thank you for doing all that. That was a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because It's better. One thing I want to make sure we're doing with the policies and procedures is being proactive rather than reactive. And that was actually something that was highlighted at the Utah Library Directors Conference that I was at. Was they're like, we can't afford to be reactive anymore with our policies and procedures. You got to be proactive. So that's why I read through all of the Salt Lake City Library's policies and procedures, and then found the ones that I felt were applicable to us. And I think once we do this cleanup, then we should be ready to go.
Awesome. So the plan in October then is to
Yes.
present these for vote.
Yeah, so my plan is I'm going to submit all of these, make those tweaks that we just discussed, submit them to the attorney, get his feedback, make those tweaks, make sure that everything's good there, and then maybe like a week before our next meeting, I'll email these out to you guys so you can do kind of a one final review based on the attorney's feedback, and then we can be ready to vote at our next meeting, your next
When
meeting.
when you said the agenda, I assumed it was just this, so I didn't even open it. I didn't know any of this was attached.
You're fine. Well, no, so when I sent the agenda, I didn't have all these attached. I only sent an email with all these an hour ago. So you're
Oh,
good.
okay.
You didn't,
Oh
you didn't
my-
miss
That makes
it.
more sense.
Yeah, so
You
sorry.
didn't miss anything. So
I thought it was just an agenda.
because I was still making tweaks to these up until literally
Okay.
a couple hours ago. So.
Yeah.
I didn't see that, I didn't see the email that came out, so.
And then I did have one more quick thing that I wanted to let everyone know about. Where I'm looking at updating our library fee schedule to account for faxing. We don't currently do faxing services. However, I've seen we get a couple people a week that'll come in and ask
wow.
for. Okay, it depends. Some staff say it's at least once or twice a week. Others say they don't see it very often. But in general, that's kind of what I've seen just when I've been shadowing staff. And right now, we're sending them to the UPS store or to Macy's, where they charge them an arm and a leg for it. And so we currently have our phone system includes e-faxing services. So that's one of the things I'm working with Steve on, our IT guy, to see how hard would it be, what would it take, and I anticipate that we'll do that. And I'm looking at maybe doing $1 for a fax to send or receive. That way, we're not undercutting the local businesses, but we're providing a good alternative to them.
If you receive faxes, and
That's-
this is my
Yeah, and that's the
overthinking brain.
only, yeah.
If you start receiving faxes, there might have to be a whole new discussion about
And that's where I'm not,
everything.
yeah, I'm not certain about that part of it, at the very least to send faxes.
Yeah.
I am also a little hesitant on the receiving part of it.
Yeah,
but-
that might have to be like a full discussion about what
Okay.
risks there are and the implications and how long you hold it and whether it's confidential information and stuff like that.
Yeah, because we also do that with like people's prints are stored on our print server for at least a little bit before we print them.
Well, same with the e-fax. I think
So-
it stores for a little bit in the system.
So those are discussions I'm having with the IT team, but just want to let you know I do want to at least move forward with the sending of the faxes, the receiving part. I'll probably have an update in October about that.
And even sending faxes, you'll want to check to see how long it stays on the system and if there's a way to just immediately purge it.
And HIPAA compliance and stuff like that if
Yeah,
people are sending
there's-
their medical records. Because it's like that's the only two things people need faxes for really is government and medical.
Medical.
So
All right.
I know I heard
I'm
it.
like, can you just email it to me? No.
We have to fax.
That's really?
Do you though? Do you?
I heard a funny joke.
Just text me a picture.
I heard a funny joke about that where it's like, hey, can you fax that to me? It's like, no, I can't, Amanda. It's like, well, why can't you? It's because I can't send it from where I'm at. Well, where are you at? I'm in 2023.
That's pretty much what it is.
Next thing is, one thing that I'm looking at doing, I checked with the attorney, we wouldn't have to update the fee schedule for this. It would just be something we just put up a sign. We have people coming in asking for earbuds to use at our computer lab, or they forgot at home. So I'm just saying, okay, here's $1, here's a disposable cheapo earbud thing, and you can buy packs of them off Amazon. So I'm going to talk with the staff about that tomorrow, and hopefully get that implemented as early as this
Did
next
you
week.
make a
Nice,
profit
that's
off
great.
of it?
A tiny profit, just enough to cover the cost, and then also just a little bit more. So cool. And then my other question is since this is a public meeting, moving forward, how does the board want to handle the public comment period? Do we want to do it at like the beginning, that we have to do kind of like what city council does? Hey, we're open for public comment. And we wait the 10 seconds, no one comes up, and we say closing public comment. I would leave how you guys want to handle that. But that was just suggested that we make sure to include that on the agenda and where to put it on the agenda. If it's something to do at the beginning, like the city council does for some of it, or towards the end.
I think beginning's better and then you get all of it. at the beginning before you start talking about stuff.
Okay.
But-
So on future agendas, I can put that as like the third thing or something like that. Because I feel like if we had public here, then that means there's something big going down or something that, And, okay, and that's everything that I had for the board. So
Thank you. Thanks
you.
again for putting all that together. All right. Minutes of the June 1st.
Oh, so I found out, yeah, we didn't have a June 1st meeting, so just the last meeting. I would
The
say.
last meeting.
Yeah.
Which
I think those
was-
are online. They're, I think it was in May. Let me
In
pull.
May. It would have been right before you
Yes.
were hired.
It was in May.
Yeah, it would have been right
Yeah,
before you
because I
were
had
hired.
a lot of things going on, the field day and all the things.
All of the things. So it would have been in May. I don't have you guys seen the minutes? Do we need to hold that off till October?
Probably, yeah, because
Let's
I,
hold it off till October.
yeah, sorry, because I didn't realize you didn't have a meeting in June until today. So that's why I forgot to change that.
So that will be tabled until the October meeting.
Okay.
All right. Anything else anyone wants to bring up? Melody or Tony or anyone in person? Okay. Thank you all for being here. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
I second.
All in favor?
I.
Tony and Melody, you in favor of adjourning?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tony?
Tony?
We may have lost Tony. I think we lost Tony. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.